Hey friends, welcome to the Raising Boys and Girls podcast. I'm Sissy Goff.
And I'm David Thomas.
And I'm Melissa Trevathan.
And we're so glad you've joined us for this conversation. Let's dive in.
Originally from Australia, Dr. Darren Whitehead has lived in the United States for over 25 years. He is the founder and senior pastor of Church of the City with several locations across Nashville. He earned his doctorate from Capital Seminary and graduate school. Brandy Whitehead is a seventh-generation Tennessean who graduated from Lipscomb University and the University of Tennessee. Brandy feels a deep call to engage the church on the issue of foster care with a desire to live out James 1:27 in helpful, practical ways, and she has dedicated the last 25 years to working with and advocating for vulnerable children in government, nonprofit, and ministry settings. Brandy and Darren have been married for 20 years, and they have 3 daughters. Enjoy our conversation with the Whiteheads, and this one was so rich, you all, and we travel from the importance of taking a digital fast as a family to the foster care system and what we can do to care for the kids in our community. So you'll want to stick around for the full conversation with these 2 kind-hearted, generous friends of ours. This is so fun to get to sit down and have a conversation with the 2 of you. I'm so excited, and we're so honored that y'all would spend the time with us talking about really important things, 2 different but very important things of where you're each working and where you come together and overlap in a lot of ways. And you both have done so much for our city, for beyond our city, making such a difference in so many places. And so as we're starting, will you talk a little bit about your family? And I don't know that I've ever heard how you met.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, so
Go ahead, babe.
we actually met at church, at the People's Church in Franklin. So he was a youth pastor and I was a social worker. So I was a government social worker in Davidson County. And we joke that he would have a bad day and that would be like a parent losing a sleeping bag at camp. Like that's a rough day. And I would have like an active shooter in the parking lot and I can't get out of my
See, we all have
office.
problems. So we all deal with stuff.
Right, yeah.
Yeah, we met at church. I was preaching. She walked in, saw me and said, "He will be mine. Oh, yes, he will be mine."
I've heard that a few times.
Yeah.
Yes. Never gets old.
Yeah. 22 years later. Yeah. That's right.
That's good.
Yeah.
And now we
have 3 daughters, 13, 15, and 17. So we're deep in the teenage years, girl fest, everything. Have lots of parties, lots of sleepovers, lots of girl hang time at our house. So we know teenage girl.
Yeah, I was one of 3 boys growing up, didn't have any sisters.
Wow.
And now I live in a house of ladies. And sometimes I describe it as there's always someone crying in the house. It's usually me. Usually me. Yes. Yeah, a lot of ladies, but it's a lot of joy. Publicly, I complain about it, and privately, I love it.
Yeah.
That's great.
Tell about how when you were a youth pastor, you thought you had the teenage girls.
Oh, you know what's funny? You know, I was a youth pastor for 10 years.
Wow.
And so I was around teenage boys and teenage girls a lot. And I felt like, one day when I have teenagers of my own, I'm just going to have this down, like I've got my 10,000 hours. I should be good. And it turns out that there is a fairly sizable difference between a teenage girl in public and a teenage girl in the privacy of their own home and the safety of their own home.
There is.
And I am so much less good at this than I expected that I would be. But I love them dearly. We're very connected to them. But yeah, it's very different than when I was their youth pastor.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Well, along those lines, will you all talk a little bit about the work that you're each currently doing and even what led you there?
So I moved to America in 1998, and I became a pastor by accident, actually. I came over to work in radio, and when I was...
Really?
Yeah. When I was trying to get my work permit in Melbourne, Australia, the person who was receiving the petition, the application, misunderstood my file, my application, and instead of giving me a commercial work visa, because I was coming to work at a Christian radio station, they thought, well, I need to give him a religious visa. So they gave me a pastor's visa instead. And what that meant is that I had to become a pastor if I wanted to stay in America.
No.
I'd never planned to be a pastor. I had no aspirations of doing that, no training.
Wow. I did not
and yet
know that.
then I had a pastor's visa. So when people ask me, how did the Lord call you into the ministry? I say the U.S. government called me into this. And then out of fear of deportation, I just keep preaching every single week. So here I am.
Wow.
So I moved to Nashville in 1998, lived with an Australian family, the Smallbones, of the more recent Unsung Hero fame.
We just had them on.
Yeah, I heard that. I saw that. And so about 5 years after that story is when I joined living in their home.
Wow.
And I lived with them for the first 2 years of living in the US, and they really helped me acclimate, lived in their basement. And so then we met in 2001, got married. We moved to Chicago. We were there for 8 years. We're at a church called Willow Creek. And all three of our girls were born there. Then we came back and we planted Church of the City in 2013. So we just crossed our 11-year anniversary.
Wow.
Beautiful.
And perhaps the thing that has got the most airtime in the last couple of years is a project called The Village that we just broke ground on. And the genesis of that is that we inherited this beautiful property about 2 years into our church story. And we had 25 acres of green space in the center of Franklin and beautiful land. And we just kind of thought, are we just going to mow this for the next 20 years or does God have a plan for this land? And so we did a listening tour and we met with the governor and we met with the mayor. We met with the chief of police. We met with some of the DCS caseworkers in our community. And we just asked them, like, we've got this land. If we were to build something, what are the biggest problems that our city is facing and what could we do to be helpful as a church?
Wow.
And instead of just assuming we know what we should do, we really wanted to ask the people that are in the trenches and on the ground. And the outcome of that listening tour were 5 issues facing our city. The first is mental health and suicide prevention. I remember meeting with the mayor of Franklin, and he was telling me that at the time suicide was up 41%.
Wow.
And he said, if you would help us with mental health, that would really serve our city. So that was the first issue. The second issue was reliable transportation for single parents, particularly single moms. They had a hard time. If their vehicle broke down, they did not have the funds to be able to repair it. And it would cause, in one sense, a spiral in the rest of their lives, jobs and childcare and all of that kind of stuff. That was the second one. The third one was temporary placement for kids who were awaiting foster care homes. We learned that they were sleeping in the DCS office, and we thought we've got to be able to do better than children sleeping in a government floor of a government building. You know. The fourth issue was our state simply needs more foster families. And so we wanted to take on, what if we had a facility that would help recruit, train, and retain families that would continue to open their homes and open their hearts to these vulnerable children in our own backyard. And then the fifth issue was all of the children who were aging out of foster care each year. They hit 18 and 1,000 kids in our state age out every single year. And it is really disheartening to see what happens to these kids. Overwhelming percentage of the girls are pregnant before 21. Overwhelming percentage of the boys end up in prison. And we just thought we got to get upstream a little bit and try to help these kids. And so that gave way to the design and plan of something called The Village. It takes a village, to raise a child. And we just broke ground on that. We're going to have 3 different buildings. We're going to launch several ministries. And it's been one of the most exciting things we've been a part of. You know, our church raised $50 million, and
Wow.
yeah, and really a vision like that happens when a social worker and a youth pastor get married.
Yes,
right?
no kidding.
'Cause,
I was thinking about that.
You know, if I'm the strategy and the head, Brandy's definitely the heart, and there's no way that I would be thinking this way if I wasn't married to her. So that's one of the big things that we're doing.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
And my passion's been for the vulnerable population around us. A lot of churches, you know, we focus on go here, go here. I'm like, there's need right here.
Yes.
There's need right in our own backyard
Yes.
if we can find it and see it. So I feel like my job is kind of holding a torch and saying, look right here, look right here, look right here. We've got vulnerable kids all around us. And I think of these children. I serve on the foster care review board of Williamson County. So I see them. I see the kids. I've gone around the state, interviewed the kids who are waiting for their forever home and doing a video. Like I get to see them. And a lot of people, it's hard to see them and see how to help. So my passion is connecting needs and resources and easy avenues for us to help. You know, I'm a seventh generation Tennessean, and Tennesseans love to help and will volunteer if they know the need. So that's what we're about.
So grateful.
Me too.
I love knowing that.
Me too.
Well, there's so many, again, avenues of things we could talk about that y'all are making a difference. Let's jump in about this one for a minute.
Okay.
And I'm sitting here holding up this book that I was so grateful to get called The Digital Fast, 40 Days to Detox Your Mind and Reclaim What Matters Most. So grateful for you putting out this content in the world. And so
Thank you.
would love to start maybe hearing what inspired you to write it.
Yeah, well, Sissy, you've been engaged in this space as a thought leader for some time. I know you both have been speaking to these issues, so thank you. I'm kind of late to the party in trying to talk more and more about this, but in the church space, there hasn't been a lot written about it.
Yes.
And I never set out to write a book. In fact, it came out of a conversation with someone. We try to encourage our church to do a fast from food at the beginning of each year. So we do a time of prayer and fasting. And people were saying to me, you know, I'm thinking about fasting from my phone. And I thought, that's a really interesting idea. We have 3 teenage daughters who have phones. I have this growing concern about the impact of smartphones and social media on mental health, social health, and as a pastor, their spiritual health.
Yes.
And so I thought this would be a really interesting idea to experiment with. And so I said to our church, many of you have been talking about doing some sort of a fast from your phone, and I think that's a really interesting idea. I'd like to encourage you to do a fast from food, a biblical fast, but later in the year, we're all going to do a digital fast. And at the time, I had no idea what that would look like. I just thought it was a cool idea, and I just thought, well, between now and when we roll it out, I'll read a bunch of books and I'll study a lot of things, and we'll design what that could actually look like. And so about 3 months later and a bunch of books later, I rolled out to our entire church a digital fast that we would go on this journey together. And I've since learned, and I didn't know this at the time, but I've since learned social scientists like Jonathan Haidt, who's probably the leading voice in the world on this right now, describes why this is so problematic, because it is a collective action problem. And that is the idea that we all know that smartphones and social media are having a detrimental impact on mental health. And yet try and ask a teenager to then just get off social media, and they'll say, I can't because everyone else is on it.
Right.
And so people have FOMO. They don't want to be left out. And so we continue just to perpetuate this. And even the teenagers themselves know that this is a problem. Well, one of the interesting things about addressing collective action problems is having collective action. And so if you can call an entire community to do something together, it is so much easier.
Yes.
So if your kids' friends and their friend group, if their parents and their grandparents, and sometimes like even their neighbors or their small group, if everyone does it together, instead of feeling isolated and alone and missing out, you actually kind of gamify the struggle that the whole thing is.
Mm-hmm.
And so as time went on and we developed this a little bit more, we started calling people to think about the apps on your phone through the lens of distraction versus utility. So not all apps are the same. And we've got to be able to create some third way between addiction and Amish, right? We've got to be able to come up with something.
Mm-hmm.
So if you think about the utility apps on your phone are not destructive to you, right?
Mm-hmm.
When you board a plane on Southwest and you scan the app, you don't then spend 45 minutes playing with the Southwest app, you know?
Right.
No one's doom scrolling on their calculator, you know?
Right.
So the distraction apps are things like social media and games and news, shopping apps, video apps like YouTube, and then if your job allows it, email. Take all of those off for 40 days. Reduce your phone down to a utility device. So utilities are like using it as a phone, imagine that, or texting, or GPS, or calendar. So you're just using your phone for utilities, but you're removing all of the distraction, the things that become a wormhole of your attention.
Mm-hmm.
You remove all of that. And it's actually been one of the most extraordinary things we've ever done as a church. And the reason that I wrote the book is that other churches were saying, tell us more how you did this. Could you guide us through this? And so we developed a 40-day plan, and it's 4 movements of 10 days. So the first 10 days is detach. We invite people to detach from having your phone with you all the time. And again, removing all of the distraction apps from your phone. That's the first 10 days. Like most habits or addictions, you have some form of withdrawal to begin with. And so I encourage people to connect with one another when you're feeling that sense of withdrawal.
Mm-hmm.
That's the first 10 days. The second 10 days is to discover. And what happens is when you're not numbing out on a glowing rectangle for hours a day, you discover all kinds of new things about yourself, in your own just sort of self-awareness, about the people that you love, the people that are around you. You start to notice they're doing well or not doing well. And even in the voice of God, when you don't pull up at the lights and just grab your phone and start doom scrolling, there's so much more discretionary time for the Holy Spirit to speak to you.
Yes.
So it's a season of discover.
Mm-hmm.
The third movement is really quite extraordinary. That was from day 20 to 30, and that is called delight. And it is like a reboot of your senses. And I got to actually talk to Jonathan Haidt about this recently, and he was so excited because what he said is, if you want to know the brain science behind this, he says it takes several weeks before the dopamine levels in your body return to normal levels. And he said, so what happens is 20 days or so into this, 3 weeks into this, you have a physical reaction that brings joy. I was like, man, this is so enlightening to hear sort of the brain science behind it. But it's like a reboot for your senses. You see and hear and taste and feel like your body has rebooted. That's the next 10 days. The final 10 days is to determine. And that is where we invite people to think about, what do you want your long-term digital habits to be now that you've had this reset for 40 days?
And we say, instead of FOMO, you have JOMO. You know, you have the joy of missing out on social media. Like, I don't know what people ate for dinner. I don't know what, who was where or what. And I don't care. I don't care. After we did this the first time, I never put social media back on.
Wow.
About 50% of people who do this never put social media back on their phone.
Wow.
Fascinating.
Isn't that amazing?
Yes.
Because it's a better life without it.
Yeah.
And my suggestion is, it's not that you need to get off social media for the rest of your life. It's don't have it on your phone. So have it on a desktop, have it on a laptop. What it means is that you might check it once a day. It means you don't check it 68 times a day.
Yes.
So it's about the frequency because of the proximity, and these smartphones become like appendages to our body, and it just sucks up all of our attention and our time.
Yeah, so true.
Sissy, I have a confession.
Uh-oh, what have you done?
I accidentally ate Ladybird tacos 5 times last week.
David, that's a lot.
I didn't realize it until I got to the end of the week. And Connie asked me how many times I've been since Monday.
You love the new breakfast taco they added to the menu, don't you?
I cannot get enough of it.
How many Taco Tuesdays do you think we might have inspired since this podcast launched?
It may be our greatest legacy. Families having Taco Tuesday each week makes me so happy.
Well, if we are going to inspire consuming more tacos, we need to balance that out with reminding folks to take their vitamins.
And thanks to the great folks at Hiya, that's an easier task than ever.
Typical children's vitamins are basically candy in disguise, filled with 2 teaspoons of sugar, unhealthy chemicals, and other gummy junk growing kids should never eat. That's why Hiya was created, the pediatrician-approved, super-powered, chewable vitamin.
Hiya fills in the most common gaps in modern children's diets to provide the full-body nourishment our kids need with a yummy taste they love.
Formulated with the help of nutritional experts, Hiya is pressed with a blend of 12 organic fruits and veggies, then supercharged with 15 essential vitamins and minerals, including vitamin D, B12, C, zinc, folate, and many others to help support immunity, energy, brain function, mood, concentration, teeth, bones, and more.
Hiya is designed for kids of all ages and sent straight to your door, so there's one less thing to worry about.
I love that they ship straight to your door. Your first order comes with this fun bottle that kids can decorate with stickers. Henry had a ball decorating his bottle, and he knows exactly where he keeps it at my house.
We've worked out a special deal with Hiya for their best-selling children's vitamin. Receive 50% off your first order. To claim this deal, you must go to hiyahealth.com/RBG. This deal is not available on their regular website.
Go to hiyahealth.com/RBG and get your kids the full body nourishment they need to grow into healthy adults.
So thinking about its impacts on all of us individually, you both worked with families in different contexts. Like, what have you seen be some of the impacts on families uniquely?
Yeah, I volunteer in our youth ministry, and that's about 750 kids that come on a Wednesday night. And so I've been doing this since our oldest was in 6th grade. So this is about six years of watching teens, right? And I've seen such a change on clothing, interestingly enough.
Wow.
I can tell you what over half the kids are going to be wearing, from shoes down to the necklace to the bag. And they're spending some money. And I think these parents, I have to have this. Everybody else has this. I think back when I was in middle school, it was like, okay, I want Keds. I want $20 Keds. Everybody's got Keds or Treatorns, right?
Yes.
But then you're free to wear anything else. I think when our oldest there was still the store Justice, and there was some tween stuff going on, and they weren't all clones. Now they are clones. And I find it just really sad, because I think they feel to fit in. They're saying, social media is saying, I need to be wearing this brand,
Yes.
To such a more extreme way than it was even 6 years ago.
I read an article this morning that said that there has just been this massive rise of preteen skincare.
Yes.
33% increase in sales with preteens, children buying skincare products. And the image of this article was a baby with one of those little rollers that rolls on skincare, and it was just shocking.
Yeah.
All right. So to respond to your question about what we're seeing in terms of how families are reacting to this,
Yes.
so often we tend to, as parents, project our own negative habits onto our children. We see them in our children. And so we get really frustrated because their kids are on the phones, when really they've seen us be on the phones as well. And you kind of got to get your own house in order before you start trying to look at someone else. The thing about the digital fast is it causes everyone to do the thing at the same time. And so parents and kids are going, all right, we're all off social media. We're getting YouTube off of our phones. I'm getting Amazon off my phone. I'm getting so any of the stuff that causes us to sit in the living room and numb out by ourselves is gone off of the phone. And the thing I love the most about this is that parents often are reluctant to have this conversation with their kids. So social media consumption, digital device usage, this is one of these issues that just happens in plain sight and almost never gets addressed. It's just sort of normal life. And the thing that I love about if the pastor brings this up is you kind of got a third party that are bringing to the entire family,
great.
Hey, let's talk about how much we're on our phones.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And then a family goes out to lunch afterwards and goes, well, kids, what did you think about what the pastor said about how much we're all on social media? Right. And so they're kind of forced to have a family conversation. You bring this issue to the forefront. And I'm amazed and honestly thrilled. Our church has now done this twice. So the second time round, teenagers, families knew a little bit more of what to expect. And I heard from so many teenagers saying that they were excited about it coming and they look forward to doing it. You know, the reality is the kids know it's a problem. And I heard Jonathan Haidt say recently that there was some research that was done that asked teenagers, would you prefer to live in a world where smartphones and social media was never invented? And he said the majority of them said yes.
Wow.
I remember asking one of my kids, you know, do you just wish that you didn't have a phone? And she said, oh, I wish everyone didn't have a phone.
Right.
And that's what's clear. And that's what makes doing this as a community so powerful is because it is a journey that everyone goes on together.
Well, I'm sure parents are so grateful for you to table it like you are, for them to continue to have the conversation, because then they don't have to be the bad guy with the initial bringing it up. And I'm so grateful that teenagers have responded to you that way, and that there wasn't I feel like you might have gotten some eye rolls in the beginning.
Oh, I'm sure there is.
When I was preaching, particularly talking about this, you know, I had certain moments where I was like, all right, can I talk to the teenagers for a second? I know you're not loving this, okay? I get that. But they also know that this is what's better for them as well.
Yeah. Somebody said recently, maybe we were together, I can't remember where I was, that summer camps are one of the only places that kids don't have devices.
That's right.
And so I love that you're creating it not only outside of camps, but in the home.
Yes.
Because, I mean, obviously adolescents are still going to go to their rooms a lot, but you're creating opportunity for so much more FaceTime. In real life with each other too.
Yes.
I'm so grateful. Knowing that you all have walked through this together twice, are there things that you have seen that are changes as families that you would even want to comment on, encourage others to jump into?
Yeah. So the final 10 days, which is determined.
Yes.
We want to help people think about what life is going to look like now they have rebooted. And one of the metaphors I use, I borrow from Marie Kondo, you know, the lady that helps people clean out their closets.
Yes.
And her whole thing is to like pick up an item of clothing and say, does this spark joy? And if it's no, then you throw it out. And if it's yes, then you keep it. Well, I want to suggest that people do that with the apps on their phone. Does putting Instagram back on your phone spark joy? Does TikTok on your phone spark joy? Does Facebook, you know, all of these apps that clutter our minds and our lives, now that you've had 40 days of a break from it, do you really want to put it back on? And so we encourage people to develop a digital rule of life. A rule of life is a way that you want to live according to practices and disciplines. What are the rhythms that you have in your life that help replenish you, that help your soul stay in a healthy place? Well, what if we did that with our digital world, our digital consumption? And so in the book, there is a lot of advice and guidance on what does it look like for you to design your own version of what a digital rule of life is going to be for you, so that you can develop a healthy relationship with these devices. And we've been excited to see so many people do that, so many people develop that, and so many people permanently change their habits and the way that they interact with these devices as a result of that.
Can you give us any specific examples of things that people have done that you loved?
I know a lot of people that have taken email off their phone permanently. Taking email off my phone was the thing I was most anxious about. And I just sort of felt like if I don't check my inbox, at every moment that I get a chance to, I'm just going to fall behind, or people are going to be waiting, and that just proved to not be true. I can actually check email twice a day. And instead of me feeling like, oh my gosh, there's going to be,
every stoplight.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's going to be 87 emails waiting for me, there are a lot of emails, right? But a lot of them are spam, and some of them are newsletters, and some of them are just an FYI, and you kind of group them all together and then delete them or respond to them or whatever. It was a lot better. The overwhelming number one is what I mentioned earlier, and that is social media permanently being off your phone. That has been an excellent practice. I know people who have taken what they did for 40 days and permanently done that.
Wow.
So they've just said, I don't want any distraction apps on my phone ever.
Wow.
I just don't need it. Life was better before I had all of this, and it's a better kind of life removing all of this. And so I've been real excited. I didn't know what the reaction would be to doing this. Of course, some people cheat, but it's okay. It's like I'm not going around policing whether they put Instagram back on their phone during the 40 days or not. The bottom line is we're all having a conversation about this. We're all reflecting upon how we interact with these platforms and these apps. It's a very, very helpful, introspective conversation about the kind of lives that we want to live with these very, very addictive technologies around us.
Yes.
You think back on smoking, and you used to be able to smoke inside an airplane bathroom, right? You see the ashtray still there sometime. And so that was okay then. And now we look back and say, that's insane, And so I think with kids and the phones and these apps, I think we'll look back. We already are looking at and saying, that's insane to give an 11-year-old a phone.
Yes.
Like we did, but we didn't know. You want to talk some about that?
Yeah. So I like to tell parents, I don't want to put shame on them because we didn't really know.
Right.
These devices have seeped their way into our lives. The iPhone was invented in 2007, but it didn't have push notification. It didn't have a front-facing camera. It didn't have an app store. It didn't have social media. So much of the destructive or the dangerous kinds of dimensions of the iPhone, it didn't even begin with. In fact, the first 2 to 3 years, it was universally just a very positive device. It's only when all of these other things happened and when kids started getting them. And so I try to tell parents, I gave my kid an iPhone too early. I wouldn't do that again. But it was basically when my child was old enough to do sleepovers and do after-school sports, I wanted to be able to contact them. I grabbed an old iPhone from a junk drawer and I fired it up and gave it to my child.
Right.
And I thought I was just doing a fairly responsible thing as a parent. Now, if I had my time over again, I would follow the guidance of Jonathan Haidt. And he says no smartphones before high school. He says no social media before 16. He says, and by the way, his suggestion, if you want to give your kid a phone, give them a Gab phone or a light phone or a flip phone, right? So they don't have access to the whole vortex of the world coming at them,
Right.
So I want to say to parents, you don't need to feel ashamed for what we've done. There just wasn't a body of research that was really highlighting the causation of the impact of technology on mental health. It's interesting, and I'm sure you guys both know this, but the most drastically affected demographic in all of this is teenage girls going through puberty.
Yes.
And that if a girl is going through puberty and has social media, it is very, very dangerous.
Yes.
And, if you're a parent and you've got a child who's going through puberty, a daughter, particularly a daughter, but both boys and girls, and they have social media, I would say, hey, there's no judgment. None of us really knew, but there is research out now And people say, well, they use the phrase, oh, well, the ship has sailed, right? Well, ships can turn around. If you know that a ship is going to sink or go down or whatever, you're like, hey, let's turn this around. Let's course correct, right? I don't think that's necessarily an easy conversation to have with a teenager. My advice, my coaching to a parent who's in that situation is to say, let's do a fast together, all of us, and then let's revisit the conversation at the end of the fast and see how we're all doing.
Love that. Yeah.
Too.
That's awesome.
And I love that you have put that in the book. I love that you've created this blueprint for that to happen for families, for churches. I'm thinking about pastors who are listening to this right now and thinking, I want to do that at the church. I don't know exactly how to execute all of that. And thank you for putting the book out there and creating a map for that. I'm just so grateful.
Well, thank you. Yeah, our church has been the lab rats in all of this. We didn't know we were going to be. We just thought we were going to try a different kind of spiritual practice together as a community. And it has turned into a resource that we hope and pray churches all over America do, because the church is so uniquely positioned to be leading society in this with addressing a collective action problem with organized collective action.
It's so true.
It's incredible.
Yeah. David, it's so much fun to talk about some folks we respect and enjoy, and one of the fantastic shows on our beloved TSF network, Where We Are.
We do respect and admire those folks. We had the best time being on their show. They are doing such good work.
As we head into an election year, I'm so grateful for their wise, steady voices in the world.
Me too. Hosted by Michael and Melissa Ware, a lead strategist and European affairs specialist, this daily companion podcast to their Where We Are Substack releases a long-form episode on Sundays featuring Marital Chatter, which features original analysis, exclusive interviews, and curated news and content about faith, politics, and public life.
Monday through Thursdays, Michael shares The Morning Five, a 5-minute episode featuring current news and events in the political realm in a consumable and easy to understand way.
Listen and subscribe to Where We Are. You will thank us later. Okay, Brandy, in addition to being a part of executing this digital fast, both for the church and your family, you have done extraordinary work with families in so many spaces for a lot of years. And we want to talk a little bit about just your work in the foster care system as an advocate, as a board member, as a crisis counselor with the police department in so many settings. Will you just start out talking a little bit about the importance of foster care?
I was a social worker, so I got to see the needs in our community. I was an in-home counselor, so I would drive around through the roads of Tennessee, go be a crisis counselor in people's homes, and I would see great needs. And anytime I'd bring these needs to my church, they would meet them every single time. If they knew what's going on, they will meet them. So I serve on the Foster Care Review Board of Williamson County, where I get to see the faces of the kids and see the needs, and any need we can meet right away, we want to meet. And that's what the village is. It's what we have a lot of wraparound teams that wrap around foster families in our church. We have about 50 foster families in our church.
Incredible.
And so they get to have meals delivered weekly. They get respite care, and they get laundry service, which is so amazing. We started that in COVID, where we have a team of 12 to 15 people around them, but women would be at home and they're like, I'd love to do the laundry so that the foster mom can, focus on the kids' emotional needs instead of the laundry room. So it's really beautiful. So we say we're not all called to foster or adopt, but we are all called to care. And there is something we can do. Our church community has had a huge outpouring of love and care. So I think churches is what should be caring for vulnerable children. And so I just have a big passion for working with other churches, working with the state, and bridging the gap between, like, our church loves on the DCS, Department of Children's Service, their workers. I'm in there about once a week, and we're giving lunch to them. We're seeing them, like, as firefighters, as police, going into our most vulnerable population and caring for the kids.
I really love a very famous verse in James 1:27. We all know this verse. something struck me one night when I got a chance to speak to the foster families of our entire county. I was asked to speak to them, and I wasn't exactly sure what I was going to say, and I felt God drop this in my heart as I was getting ready to speak to them. And, the verse says, pure religion in the sight of God the Father is caring for orphans and widows. And what really struck me is it's in the sight of God the Father. There's a lot of things that the sight of God the Father sees that he doesn't call pure. But when that foster family is up at 2 a.m. in the morning and they're handling some sort of outburst
The
or
hardest
a crisis,
of the hard.
the most difficult, or the impact on their biological children, or just the disruption of their family, that it's so much harder than they thought it was going to be. When that happens, God sees them and he calls it pure. And I wanted to thank the foster parents of our community and say, not only do we see you, but God sees you and he calls it pure.
I love that message to every foster parent that's listening. I
Yes.
just am so glad for you all to hear.
And May
say
is
that.
Foster Care Awareness Month. So we want to thank
wow.
all the foster families out
Yes.
there.
You are
Yes.
doing God's work.
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
you
you.
are.
Yes.
Yes. I would love, Brandy, for you to talk about today what you feel like the needs are in the world of foster care. And also, and you kind of alluded, I loved what you said about care, that we can all care. But those of us who don't feel called to foster, where can we step in?
We need a lot more foster families, a lot more foster families that can work with teen sibling sets, work with
Yes.
special needs. There's a huge need for that. I would encourage families to get involved with their church if their church has a foster adoption ministry, and kind of ease into things. You don't want to just jump in blindly. It's very hard. It's very complicated. I would say start serving on a wraparound team, delivering a meal once a month, or respite care, or just seeing how you can support that family. We're all not called to foster adopt, but we are called to care.
Yes.
So that could be mowing someone's yard. It could be giving rides, just anything. And I look at this like, what have church people done for generations before, right? Like a baby shower, or there's a death and somebody takes, like my aunt, her mother died, so my grandmother's family took her in. Like, that's what church people have been doing for generations.
Yes.
And so it's really the same thing.
The great opportunity for the church, once again, is it's so uniquely positioned in a community. You have a diversity of all kinds of different ages and people and backgrounds and jobs, skill sets, and so the church, in a situation like this with these community challenges, is to organize and mobilize people. So it's people want to help. They just need some organization. And so what we have in our church is, with this wraparound ministry, is, we do shopping, and we do groceries, and we do lawn care, and house cleaning, and people are standing by ready to help. They just need some organization, and then they'll be mobilized to go and do it. And we would love to see churches, again, all around the country, say, we want to own our local Department of Children's Services office. We want to care for them. One of the things that we did, the first thing that we did to establish a relationship with DCS, is we went to their office and we said, would you allow us to renovate your office for you? And they were like, okay. And so if you go to the Williamson County DCS office, it looks like Chip and Joanna Gaines descended on the place.
Wow, y'all,
And,
that's amazing.
So we just had designers come in, and we had volunteers, and and so we just overhauled. And I love that in one of the most disheartening, difficult lines of work in being a DCS caseworker, they at least get to walk in every day, see this beautiful office. It's super cool looking, and know that there is a church and there is a community that loves them and supports them.
One story I like is that there was a four kids went into state custody, and one family took 2 and the other family took 2. And then we discovered those 2 are both in our church. And so they get together so the siblings can still get together.
Wow.
So it's like God sees and put them together in the same church body.
Family. Yes.
Extraordinary.
That's wonderful.
Okay, would love to ask now kind of the opposite. If families are feeling called to fostering, if they're either considering it or they're in the midst of it and maybe feel overwhelmed, what encouragement would you give to those families?
So I definitely say pray about it. You want God to call you into fostering. Talk to other people who are fostering. We have foster communities in our church that they draw a lot of strength from one another. We have info nights where we talk about the next steps with your church. And so we definitely have the classes at our church that you can go through to learn about how to become a foster family. And I know a lot of churches have that. The training to become is called Tennessee Key Training to become a foster family in Tennessee.
And every state would have something like
something
that.
different.
Okay. Yes. That's wonderful. Y'all, thank you for all of that. I feel so, we're not finished, but I feel so excited hearing you both talk about how people are going to be inspired in all these spaces. So, okay, last big question. What is the best parenting advice you've ever each been given?
So a parent said to me once that no matter what, keep a connection to each of your children. Stay emotionally connected. Stay with your heart attached. There's going to be different seasons where, particularly as they're growing, developing, going through puberty, going through life, it's going to feel like sometimes they might be pulling away from you, but whatever they do, stay as connected to them from an emotional and a heart sense as you possibly can. And that has been such good advice for me as a dad of 3 daughters. I am very connected to each of my girls, and they're all teenagers, and I had braced for perhaps teenage years of my kids just completely pulling away from me, and in the kindness of God, that hasn't happened. I'm still very close with each of them. My girls are also different, but I'm close to each of them, and I'm very grateful for that advice. Yeah,
that's great.
We did a life plan with Pete Richardson last October, and he was talking about how important it is for children to know where they came from and their family values. And so he had a family wall that told their values, their connection, kind of traced their history. And so I did that, and we've got 2 cabinets. One is tracing our family history through Tennessee. My kids are 8th generation Tennesseans. And we have like my great-great-grandmother's Bible and some stuff like that they have a rich legacy of faith. So we just went to Australia a few months ago and took all the girls. They're all named after a different city in Australia. And
I never realized that.
You didn't.
Wow. No, that's so cool.
And so then we tracked down his 5th great-grandmother's gravestone. And in a sea of gravestones that were square, hers had a cross. And so it said, what did it say? It had scripture, thy will be done. And then we ended up getting her Bible. So I have that in that side. So that's 5th generation grandmother's Bible, and just the legacy of faith and knowing the truth of where we've come from and what we are for. And so that's been a fun project.
That's so cool.
So good. Okay, we like to end with something fun and food related. So moving from the substantive to the silly now. And 2-part question, queso or guac. Part 2 is, what's your favorite taco?
Definitely queso for me, and probably a shrimp taco.
Good choice.
Queso and guac, I say, why choose when you can have both, No, if I have to choose, I'll go queso, but guac is right up there too. I mean, my goodness. I didn't eat Mexican food till I moved to America.
Wow.
And I just did not realize what I had been missing. At steak tacos, is where my heart is.
So
There
good.
is no doubt.
Y'all, thank you. What a rich conversation, as we knew it would be.
I'd love to say to both of you, thank you for the work that you've done in our community.
Thank you.
I know maybe hundreds of families personally that you both have personally impacted. And then beyond that, with the teams that you have built out, maybe thousands of people. But when people talk about you both, they talk about you with tears in their eyes. And they say that you provided hope and guidance and direction in the most terrifying, often the most terrifying times of their lives. We all love our children so much. And the unique gifts that God has given both of you to provide guidance when there are times where we just do not know what to do. I'm so thankful as a pastor because we get to shepherd so many families, and I know because they've told me that you've both helped them. And Sissy, you are so special to us, and we love you very, very much.
Wow.
Yep.
Y'all
Thank
too.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
So much. David, what a team we have that we get to call friends who help make this podcast possible.
Amanda Young, our operations manager,
Chris Starrett, our engineer and producer,
our management team at KCH.
and we are thrilled to be a part of the That Sounds Fun network.
Our music was created by the insanely talented Dave Haywood of Lady A.
And if this podcast felt helpful to you, please consider subscribing, liking, sharing, all the things.
We are grateful for you and cheering you on always.